The great ships of the Galactic Council moved through space like floating cities made of crystal and living metal. Admiral Zexthul stood in the command center of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the stars through walls that seemed to be made of pure light. His crystalline body reflected the soft glow of the ship's controls as he prepared for what he thought would be another easy conquest. For over 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had ruled every known corner of the universe. 12 ancient species had joined together to create the most powerful empire ever seen. The Zeltharians like Zexthul could think faster than any computer. The Vorthak could grow ships from living creatures that healed themselves. The Quentar could control pure energy with their minds. Together, they had never met a species they could not defeat and absorb into their empire. The Council's scouts had found energy readings from a part of space they had never explored before. The signals came from what humans called the Milky Way, though the Council did not know this name yet. To them, it was just another primitive star system that needed to be brought under their control. Admiral Zexthul had been chosen to lead this mission because he had conquered more species than any other Council commander. His fleet was impressive by any measure. 47 ships of different designs floated around his flagship, each one representing the best technology their species could create. Zeltharian vessels looked like floating diamonds that could cut through space itself. Vorthak bioships resembled giant sea creatures with tentacles that could reach across vast distances. Quentar energy ships were barely visible, existing somewhere between matter and pure light. The alien crews aboard these ships had no doubt about their mission's outcome. They had done this hundreds of times before. Find a new species, demonstrate superior power, accept their surrender, and integrate them into the Council's empire. It was a process that had worked perfectly for thousands of years. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UNS Defiance, a human warship that looked nothing like the elegant alien vessels approaching his position. Where Council ships were smooth and artistic, the Defiance was all sharp angles and brutal efficiency. Its dark metal hull bore scars from countless battles, and weapon ports dotted its surface like the eyes of some predatory beast. Morrison was 45 years, old with gray hair and weathered skin that spoke of years spent in the harsh environment of space. He had volunteered for this mission knowing he might never see Earth again. The 200 crew members aboard his ship had made the same choice. They were humanity's first ambassadors to galactic civilization, but they were prepared to be its first martyrs if necessary. Communications officer Lisa Barnes sat at her station, monitoring the alien transmissions that filled the space around them. She was 28 years old with red hair and green eyes that missed nothing on her displays. Her job was to understand what these aliens wanted, though she suspected she already knew. Tactical Officer Ryan Cooper manned the weapons console, his dark skin glistening with sweat despite the cool air on the bridge. At 32, he was the youngest senior officer on the ship, but his quick mind and steady hands had earned him his position. His fingers moved across controls that could unleash destruction the aliens had never imagined. Chief Engineer Amy Carter worked 3 decks below in the engine room, surrounded by machinery that hummed with barely contained power. She was 35 years old with blonde hair tied back in a practical ponytail. Her engines could push the Defiance to speeds that would crush most alien crews, and her weapons systems operated on principles that galactic science had never discovered. The aliens had been watching humanity for only a few days, but humans had been watching galactic civilization for over a century. Secret observation posts throughout human space had monitored alien communications, studied their technology, and learned their military tactics. What the Council didn't know was that humanity had deliberately chosen not to copy their methods. Morrison watched the alien fleet arrange itself in what he recognized as a standard intimidation formation. The largest ships moved to the front, while smaller vessels spread out to surround his single ship. It was meant to demonstrate overwhelming force and encourage immediate surrender. The aliens had probably used this same tactic thousands of times before. Lisa Barnes looked up from her communications console with a slight smile. "Sir, they're transmitting what appears to be a surrender demand. Their translation software is trying to convert their language into something we can understand. It's pretty basic compared to our systems." The message that came through was simple and arrogant. The aliens identified themselves as representatives of the Galactic Council and demanded immediate surrender. They wanted humanity to submit to galactic law and accept integration into their empire as a client species. There was no room for negotiation in their words, no suggestion that humanity might have a choice in the matter. Morrison read the message twice before looking around his bridge at the men and women who had trusted him with their lives. Each one of them knew what this moment meant. Humanity's response would determine whether their species joined the galaxy as equals or as slaves. Ryan Cooper spoke first, his voice calm despite the tension. "Sir, their ships are moving into attack positions. I count 47 vessels, with the largest one massing about 10 times our weight. They've got energy shields up and weapons charging." Amy Carter's voice came over the intercom from the engine room. "Captain, I'm reading some kind of biological contamination attempt on our hull. Looks like they're trying to use living organisms to disable our systems. The organisms are dying on contact with our armor plating." Morrison nodded slowly. The aliens were already trying to disable his ship using methods that had probably worked on every other species they had encountered. What they didn't understand was that humanity had studied their tactics and prepared accordingly. The Defiance had been built specifically for this encounter. Its armor was not energy-based like Galactic Standard, but consisted of overlapping metal plates that could be manipulated through electromagnetic fields. Its weapons did not rely on energy beams or plasma, but used simple physics applied with devastating precision. Most importantly, its crew had been trained to fight in ways that alien minds could not predict. Morrison looked at the alien fleet surrounding his ship and made the decision that would change galactic history forever. Instead of surrendering or begging for mercy, he gave an order that no council species had ever heard from a primitive newcomer. "Lisa, send them our response." His voice was steady and calm, showing none of the fear that any reasonable person should feel when facing impossible odds. "Tell them we decline their offer and suggest they withdraw from this system immediately." The words that Lisa Barnes transmitted back to the alien fleet were simple, polite, and completely unexpected. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had been told no by a species they considered primitive. The response would echo across the galaxy and shake the foundation of everything the Council believed about their own superiority. Admiral Zexthul stared at the translation of the human message with complete confusion flooding his crystalline mind. In 3,000 years of galactic expansion, no species had ever simply said no to the Council's demands. They either surrendered immediately upon seeing the overwhelming power of the fleet, or they attacked in desperate panic before being easily crushed. This calm refusal was something entirely outside his experience. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion fell silent as the alien crew tried to process what they had just heard. Commander Veltar, a Vorthak bioengineer whose ship symbiont writhed with agitation, was the first to speak. "Admiral, perhaps their translation systems are malfunctioning. No primitive species would dare refuse the Council's authority." Zexthul's crystal body flickered through different colors as he considered the possibilities. His species had evolved beyond individual emotion, but even he felt something approaching disbelief at the human response. "Run a deep scan of their vessel. I want to know exactly what we are dealing with." The results of the scan only added to the aliens' confusion. The human ship registered as a single vessel with approximately 200 life forms aboard. Its mass was insignificant compared to even the smallest Council destroyer. The energy readings suggested primitive nuclear power rather than the advanced fusion systems used by galactic civilization. By every measure they understood, the humans should be completely helpless against their fleet. Captain Morrison watched the alien ships begin to move into more aggressive formations through the tactical display on his bridge. The elegant vessels, spread out in patterns that would allow them to attack from multiple angles while preventing their target from escaping. It was a beautiful demonstration of coordinated space warfare, and it would have been terrifying to any species that fought according to galactic standards. Lisa Barnes continued monitoring alien communications as their confusion turned to anger. "Sir, they're discussing whether to consider our response an act of war. Their leader seems genuinely shocked that we didn't surrender immediately." Ryan Cooper studied the alien formations with professional interest. During his years of training for this mission, he had memorized every known Council battle tactic. The aliens were positioning themselves exactly as human strategists had predicted they would. "Captain, they're setting up for a standard pacification, assault, biowarfare, electronic disruption, and energy weapon bombardment, just like the simulations." Morrison nodded grimly. Humanity had spent decades preparing for this moment after their deep space observation posts had detected signs of galactic civilization. The discovery that an enormous empire controlled most of the known galaxy had forced human leadership to make a difficult choice. They could try to hide and hope they were never discovered, or they could prepare to meet this empire as equals. The decision to prepare for conflict had not been made lightly. Human philosophers and strategists had studied every piece of intelligence they could gather about council methods. They had learned that the Galactic Empire absorbed new species through a combination of technological superiority and psychological intimidation. Species that could not match council technology were assumed to be helpless. Amy Carter's voice came over the intercom from the engine room, her tone professionally calm despite the danger they all faced. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple attack vectors beginning. They're releasing what looks like engineered organisms designed to penetrate our hull and disable our systems. Also reading electromagnetic pulses aimed at our computer networks." The Vorthak bioships had begun their standard opening move, releasing clouds of specially designed organisms that could eat through most known materials and reproduce inside enemy vessels. These biological weapons had never failed to disable a target ship within minutes of deployment. Simultaneously, Quentar energy specialists were directing focused electromagnetic attacks at what they assumed were the humans' electronic systems. Morrison smiled slightly as he watched the alien attacks fail completely. The bioorganisms struck the Defiance's armor plating and immediately died on contact. Human metallurgy had developed along completely different lines from galactic standard, using techniques that were toxic to the Council's biological weapons. The electromagnetic attacks found no vulnerable electronics to disrupt, because human ships used hardened systems that could survive nuclear warfare. "Sir," Ryan Cooper reported with satisfaction in his voice, "their attacks are having zero effect. The bioweapons can't penetrate our armor composition, and our electronics are shielded against electromagnetic pulse. They're trying to use their standard playbook on an opponent who doesn't follow their rules." The aliens' confusion deepened as their opening attacks failed to disable the human vessel. Admiral Zex Thul had never encountered a situation where Council weapons proved completely ineffective. His crystalline features shifted through colors that indicated deep thought as he tried to understand what was happening. "Impossible," he transmitted to his fleet commanders. "Their technology appears primitive by our standards. How can they resist our bioweapons and electronic warfare?" The answer was something that galactic civilization had never considered. Humanity had evolved on a world that Council xenobiologists would classify as a death planet. Earth's harsh environment, violent weather patterns, and aggressive predator species had forced humans to develop along different evolutionary paths. Where other species had transcended their violent origins, humans had refined those capabilities into tools of precision and survival. Human technology reflected this different approach to existence. Instead of the elegant energy-based solutions favored by galactic civilization, Humans built things to last through catastrophe. Their ships were designed to survive nuclear warfare, biological contamination, and electromagnetic storms. What the aliens saw as primitive was actually a completely different technological philosophy. Morrison decided it was time to demonstrate exactly how different humanity's approach could be. "Ryan, are our kinetic systems ready?" Cooper's hands moved across his weapons console with practiced efficiency. "Yes, sir. Railgun batteries charged and loaded with standard tungsten penetrators. Targeting solutions calculated for their command vessel." The weapon systems aboard the Defiance represented humanity's answer to galactic military technology. While aliens used energy beams and plasma weapons that could be deflected by shields, humans had perfected the art of accelerating simple metal rods to incredible velocities. The concept was ancient and brutal, but the execution was precise beyond anything galactic civilization had imagined. "Fire one round at their flagship," Morrison ordered. "Let's see how their shields handle basic physics." The tungsten rod that emerged from the Defiance's railgun was nothing more than a simple piece of metal, but it was moving at 30% of light speed. The aliens' energy shields, designed to deflect lasers and plasma bolts, offered no resistance to solid matter traveling at relativistic velocity. Admiral Zexthul had just enough time to register an incoming projectile on his sensors before the tungsten rod struck his flagship. The impact sent shock waves through the massive vessel as the metal penetrator punched through 3 decks before its kinetic energy tore the ship apart from the inside. The destruction of the Council's most advanced warship by what appeared to be a primitive projectile weapon sent waves of shock through the alien fleet. For the first time in their species' history, they faced an enemy who fought by completely different rules than they understood. The silence that followed the destruction of the Eternal Dominion lasted only seconds before panic erupted across the alien fleet. Admiral Zexthul's flagship, the most advanced warship in the galaxy, had been destroyed by what their sensors registered as a simple metal projectile. The impossible had become reality, and the remaining Council commanders struggled to understand what they were facing. Commander Veltar took control of the fleet from his bioship, the Living Harmony. His vessel writhed and pulsed as it processed, the shock of seeing their most powerful ship destroyed. "All vessels, implement defensive formation Omega-7, he broadcast to the remaining 46 ships. "Whatever weapon they used, it cannot be that powerful." The alien fleet began to reorganize, their beautiful ships moving into a protective formation that had never failed to protect them from enemy fire. Energy shields strengthened to maximum power, while their most advanced vessels moved to shield the smaller ones. The commanders still believed they were dealing with some kind of primitive lucky shot that could not be repeated. Captain Morrison watched the alien response with professional interest. The Council ships were moving exactly as human strategists had predicted they would. Years of observation had taught humanity how galactic military thinking worked. The aliens would try to protect themselves using energy shields and superior firepower, never imagining that their enemy might have weapons that made such defenses useless. "Ryan, do you have targeting solutions on their new formation?" Morrison asked his weapons officer. Ryan Cooper smiled as he studied the alien ships clustering together for mutual protection. "Yes, sir. They're making it easier for us by grouping up like that. I can hit 3 ships with 1 shot if I angle it right." The human crew had trained for this scenario countless times in simulations. They knew that alien psychology would make the Council fleet react in predictable ways to unexpected threats. The clustering behavior was exactly what human planners had hoped for. Lieutenant Commander Dan Walsh, the Defiance's secondary weapons officer, monitored the nuclear missile systems while Cooper handled the rail guns. Walsh was 30 years old, with brown hair and sharp blue eyes that never missed a detail. His weapons were designed for a different kind of destruction than Cooper's kinetic rounds. "Sir, should I prep the nuclear torpedoes?" Walsh asked quietly. Nuclear weapons were considered primitive by galactic standards, but humans had refined them into precision instruments of war. Morrison shook his head. Not yet, Dan. Let's see what they do when they realize their formation won't protect them. The Defiance began to move, and its motion shocked the alien observers as much as its weapons had. Council ships glided through space using gravity manipulation and energy fields that allowed smooth, elegant movement. The human warship moved like a predator, using controlled explosions and momentum shifts that should have killed any crew inside. Amy Carter pushed the engines harder, sending nuclear fire through the ship's drive systems in carefully timed bursts. The acceleration forces would have crushed most alien species, but humans had evolved in Earth's higher gravity and could endure punishment that would destroy their enemies. The Defiance twisted and turned through space in ways that violated every principle of civilized space combat. The aliens tried to track the human ship with their weapons, but their targeting systems were designed for the predictable movements of energy-based propulsion. The Defiance's brutal acceleration patterns made it nearly impossible to hit with conventional weapons. Commander Veltar watched in growing horror as the human ship moved through maneuvers that should have been impossible. "How are they surviving those acceleration forces?" he demanded of his science officers. "Our biological analysis indicates they should be unconscious or dead." The answer was something that galactic civilization had never encountered. Humans came from a world with gravity nearly twice that of most Council homeworlds. Their bones were denser, their muscles stronger, and their cardiovascular systems more robust than any known species. What looked like suicide to alien observers was simply how humans fought when they needed to. Cooper lined up his next shot on a cluster of 3 Zeltharian destroyers that were trying to protect each other with overlapping energy shields. "Target acquired, sir. 3 ships in formation, Delta." Morrison nodded. "Fire." The second tungsten rod left the Defiance's railgun at the same incredible velocity as the first. The alien ships tried to intercept it with energy weapons. But shooting at a solid object moving at 30% of light speed was like trying to stop a hurricane with a fan. The projectile punched through the first ship's shields and hull as if they were made of paper, continued through the second vessel, and finally embedded itself in the third before exploding from kinetic energy. 3 more Council warships died. In as many seconds, their advanced technology useless against the simple physics of mass and velocity. The alien commanders finally began to understand that they were not fighting an enemy who played by their rules. The Vorthak bioships attempted a new strategy, releasing swarms of fighter-sized organisms that could move independently and attack from multiple directions. These living fighters had overwhelmed countless enemy fleets with their numbers and unpredictable movement patterns. Lisa Barnes monitored the approaching swarm through her sensors. "Sir, I count over 200 small craft incoming. They're moving in what looks like an organic pattern, no fixed formation." Morrison turned to Walsh. "Dan, this looks like a job for your department." Walsh's fingers danced across his controls as he activated the Defiance's point defense systems. Instead of energy beams like the aliens expected, the human ship deployed what amounted to nuclear-powered shotguns. Each defensive turret fired clouds of metal fragments accelerated to tremendous velocities by small nuclear charges. The alien biofighters flew directly into these fragment clouds and disintegrated instantly. Their organic hulls, evolved to resist energy weapons and biological attacks, offered no protection against simple metal moving at hypersonic speeds. Within minutes, the entire swarm had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris. The remaining Council ships began to retreat, but the Defiance was faster than anything in their fleet. Its nuclear drive system could push it to accelerations that would kill alien crews, allowing it to chase down fleeing enemies with ease. One by one, the human warship systematically disabled the alien vessels. "Not destroyed," Morrison had ordered his crew to target engines and weapons rather than life support. He wanted survivors to carry word of this encounter back to their empire. When the battle ended, only 12 council ships remained operational out of the original 47. The rest floated dead in space, their crews alive but helpless. The most powerful fleet in galactic history had been defeated by a single human vessel using weapons and tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Commander Veltar transmitted a surrender message, his bioship trembling with fear and confusion. For the first time in Council history, they were asking for mercy from a species they had intended to conquer. Morrison accepted their surrender with the same calm professionalism he had shown throughout the battle. The message he sent back would echo through galactic history and change the balance of power forever. The news of the Council fleet's defeat spread across the galaxy faster than light itself through the quantum communication networks that connected every civilized world. On the crystal cities of Zelthara Prime, the bio-colonies of Vorthak Central, and the energy matrices of Quentar Home, billions of beings received the impossible report with the same shocked disbelief. High crystalline Zarthex of the Zeltharian Council stood in the great chamber where galactic law had been written for 3 millennia. His ancient crystal body flickered through colors that had not been seen since the early wars of expansion. Around him, the other 11 council species gathered in emergency session, their representatives showing signs of panic that had been unknown in their civilizations for thousands of years. The quantum recordings from Commander Veltar's bioship played again and again on the chamber's central display. The images showed the impossible sight of council warships being destroyed by simple metal projectiles fired by a single alien vessel. The most advanced military technology in the galaxy had been rendered useless by weapons that seemed to belong to a primitive industrial age. Bioprime Nexara of the Vorthok spoke first, her living ship symbiont writhing with agitation as she addressed the assembly. The recordings must be false. No species could achieve such destruction with kinetic weapons. Our shields are designed to stop anything moving at sublight speeds. The Quentar Energy Master Lumineth existed as a being of pure light contained within crystal matrices, but even his advanced energy form showed signs of disturbance. The physics are correct. The projectiles were moving at 30% of light speed. At such velocities, kinetic energy exceeds our shield capabilities by several orders of magnitude. High crystalline Zarthex processed the implications with the cold logic of his species. If these humans can accelerate simple matter to such velocities, their technology operates on principles we have not encountered. We must know more about them immediately. Meanwhile, the UNS Horizon emerged from hyperspace near the galactic capital, carrying humanity's first official diplomatic mission. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the sleek vessel, watching the massive space stations and orbital cities that surrounded the Council's seat of power. She was 42 years old, with dark hair and intelligent brown eyes that missed nothing of the alien architecture surrounding them. The Horizon was built for diplomacy rather than war, but it carried the same revolutionary technology that had shocked the galaxy. Its hull bore no scars like the Defiance, but the weapons ports and armor plating sent a clear message about humanity's capabilities. This was a species that came to negotiate from a position of strength. Dr. Alex Turner, humanity's chief xenobiologist, worked in the ship's laboratory, preparing for the most important first contact in human history. He was 38 years old, with sandy brown hair and green eyes that sparkled with intellectual curiosity. His job was to help the aliens understand how humanity had developed so differently from every other known species. The Horizon's arrival caused immediate panic among the orbital defense systems. The Council's automated weapons tried to scan the human vessel, but found their sensors blocked by armor that seemed to absorb rather than reflect their scanning beams. The ship's energy signature was unlike anything in their databases, using power systems that operated on unfamiliar principles. Admiral Susan Hayes commanded the Horizon from the bridge. her experienced eyes taking in the alien defenses with professional interest. She was 50 years old with silver hair and steel blue eyes that had seen combat in humanity's colonial wars. Her presence aboard the diplomatic vessel served as a reminder that humans were prepared for any outcome to these negotiations. Navigation. Officer Ben Clark plotted their approach to the council chambers, his instruments reading gravitational fields and energy patterns that human science was only beginning to understand. He was 29 years old with black hair and dark skin, one of the youngest officers ever assigned to such an important mission. The alien response to humanity's arrival revealed just how much the galaxy had changed in the weeks since the Defiance's victory. Instead of the arrogant demands that had greeted Captain Morrison, the Council sent careful diplomatic messages requesting permission to meet with human representatives. Ambassador Rodriguez smiled as she read the alien communications. The tone was completely different from the surrender demands that had been sent to the Defiance. These aliens were no longer certain of their superiority, and their messages reflected a new respect for human capabilities. The council chamber itself was a marvel of galactic engineering, a massive sphere that could accommodate representatives from dozens of different species. Gravity fields, atmospheric processors, and environmental controls created perfect conditions for beings who had evolved under completely different circumstances. When Ambassador Rodriguez entered the chamber, the effect on the assembled aliens was immediate and profound. She walked with the confident stride of a species that had never been conquered, her human physiology radiating an aura of physical capability that made the elegant aliens seem fragile by comparison. Dr. Turner accompanied her, carrying data tablets that contained information about human civilization. The revelations he was about to share would shake the foundation of everything the Council believed about galactic development. High Crystalline Zarthex spoke first, his crystalline voice resonating through translation systems that struggled to convert human speech patterns. Ambassador Rodriguez, we welcome humanity to the galactic community. We wish to understand how your species developed such advanced weapons technology. Rodriguez smiled diplomatically before delivering the first shock to galactic understanding. Honored council members, I must correct a misconception. The weapons that defeated your fleet are not advanced by our standards. They represent basic human military technology, the kind we use for training exercises and colonial defense. The silence that followed this statement was deafening. The most powerful weapons the galaxy had ever encountered were considered basic technology by the species that created them. The implications were terrifying to civilizations that had built their power on technological superiority. Dr. Turner stepped forward to explain the biological and evolutionary factors that had shaped human development. The galaxy's species have followed similar evolutionary paths because you developed on worlds with similar conditions. Humanity evolved on what you would classify as a death world under circumstances that forced us to develop differently. The xenobiologist activated a holographic display showing Earth's violent weather patterns, aggressive predator species, and gravitational forces that exceeded most galactic norms. Our homeworld shaped us into a species adapted for conflict and survival. What you see as primitive weapons are actually the result of millions of years of evolutionary pressure. Communications specialist Nina Lopez worked to establish direct diplomatic channels that bypassed traditional council infrastructure. She was 26 years old with blonde hair and blue eyes, and her technical skills were opening new possibilities for galactic communication. The revelations continued as humanity shared carefully selected information about their civilization. The Council learned that human space contained hundreds of colonies spread across dozens of star systems. The single ship that had defeated their fleet was one of thousands in humanity's growing military. Most shocking of all was the discovery that humans had been observing galactic civilization for over a century without being detected. Secret monitoring stations throughout human space had studied alien technology, learned their languages, and analyzed their military capabilities. Humanity had come to this first contact fully prepared for every possible outcome. Admiral Hayes revealed the final piece of information that would change galactic politics forever. The Defiance was not our most advanced warship. It was chosen for this mission because its technology could be easily understood by galactic science. Our actual military capabilities remain classified. The Council faced a reality they had never imagined possible. For the first time in 3,000 years, they had encountered a species that was not only their equal, but potentially their superior. The galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the first encounter between humanity and the Galactic Council, the galaxy had transformed in ways that no one could have predicted. The news of a single human warship defeating the Council's most powerful fleet had spread to every corner of civilized space, carrying with it a message that challenged 3,000 years of established order. On the mining worlds of the Kepler sector, species that had served the Council for generations began to whisper about independence. The Altarian crystal farmers stopped sending their tribute shipments and demanded to negotiate directly with human traders. The Proxima bioengineers started experimenting with technologies that didn't follow galactic standards, inspired by humanity's example of choosing a different path. Captain Jake Morrison found himself the most famous human in the galaxy, though he would have preferred to remain anonymous. The UNS Defiance had become a symbol of resistance against Council authority, and its captain received messages from dozens of species asking for protection from their former masters. Morrison read each request carefully, knowing that humanity's response would shape the future of galactic civilization. The human fleet had grown significantly since that first encounter, with Earth's government deciding that full disclosure was necessary. Admiral Susan Hayes now commanded a diplomatic mission that included 12 warships, each one carrying technology that made the Council's remaining forces obsolete. The aliens watched these vessels with a mixture of fear and fascination, knowing they represented a complete shift in galactic power. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez worked tirelessly to establish new relationships throughout the galaxy, meeting with species that had never been allowed to speak directly with outside powers. Her diplomatic ship, the Horizon, had become a mobile embassy that traveled from system to system, offering alternatives to the Council's rigid hierarchy. The most significant change came from an unexpected source. The Council's client species began to rebel not through violence, but through simple refusal to follow orders. The Tau-Cetian traders stopped using Council shipping routes and started working directly with human merchants. The Epsilon Eridani researchers abandoned their assigned projects and began studying human technology instead. Dr. Alex Turner established research stations where human and alien scientists worked together as equals rather than in the master-servant relationship the Council had enforced. These joint facilities produced breakthroughs that neither species could have achieved alone, proving that cooperation was more powerful than domination. The Free Systems Alliance grew from a small group of rebel worlds into a coalition that rivaled the Council itself. Species that had been enemies for centuries found common ground in their desire for independence from galactic authority. Human diplomatic ships facilitated these new relationships, offering protection and trade opportunities that the Council had denied them. Communications specialist Nina Lopez played a crucial role in this transformation by establishing communication networks that bypassed Council infrastructure. Her quantum relay systems allowed species to talk directly with each other for the first time in millennia, breaking the information monopoly that had kept the galaxy divided. The Council's response to these changes revealed just how much their power had depended on controlling information and maintaining technological superiority. When their client species gained access to alternatives, the empire that had seemed unshakable began to crumble from within. High crystalline Zarthex called another emergency session as reports arrived of entire sectors declaring independence. The crystalline beings had never experienced such rapid change, and their logical minds struggled to process the implications of their diminishing authority. The humans have not conquered us through force. Zarthex admitted to the assembled council. They have simply shown our subjects that other ways of existence are possible. This is more dangerous to our authority than any military defeat. Bio-Prime Nexara's symbiont writhed with distress as she reported the loss of dozens of bioengineering facilities. Our client species are abandoning our biological technologies in favor of human mechanical alternatives. They claim our methods are too restrictive and controlling. The Quentar Energy Master Lumineth flickered with patterns that indicated deep concern. Energy manipulation requires absolute conformity to our principles. The humans encourage diversity and individual choice. These concepts are incompatible with our methods of control. Meanwhile, Captain Morrison continued his patrol duties along the borders of human space. But his role had evolved far beyond simple military command. The Defiance had become a mobile symbol of protection for species seeking independence from council rule. Wherever the scarred warship appeared, oppressed peoples found the courage to demand their freedom. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Kate Stevens made perhaps the most important discovery of the entire First Contact period. Her medical research revealed that humans were biologically compatible with treatment methods from dozens of alien species, but their healing rates and trauma resistance exceeded anything in galactic medical databases. This biological resilience proved to be another advantage that humanity brought to galactic civilization. Human medical techniques, developed to treat injuries that would kill most aliens, revolutionized healthcare throughout the Free Systems Alliance. Survival rates for combat injuries and industrial accidents improved dramatically wherever human. Medics worked alongside alien doctors. The transformation of galactic civilization reached its culmination when the first Joint Research Station produced a breakthrough in faster-than-light travel. Human engineering combined with alien science created propulsion systems that were more efficient and reliable than anything either species had developed alone. Navigator Ben Clark tested the new drive systems aboard a prototype vessel that incorporated the best elements of both human and alien technology. The ship could travel farther and faster than any Council vessel while maintaining the durability and weapons capability that made human ships so effective in combat. The success of these cooperative projects demonstrated that diversity in thinking and technology produced better results than the conformity the Council had enforced. Species that had been forced to abandon their unique capabilities in favor of galactic standards rediscovered their individual strengths and applied them to new challenges. Admiral Hayes established the final piece of the new galactic order when she announced the creation of joint defense forces. Human warships would protect any species that chose independence from Council rule, but the alliance would be based on mutual cooperation rather than domination. The old Galactic Council still existed, but its authority had shrunk to encompass only those species that chose to remain within its rigid structure. The majority of the galaxy had embraced the human example of diversity and individual choice over enforced conformity. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching a joint training exercise where human and alien crews worked together aboard ships that combined the best technologies from dozens of different species. The scarred warship that had shocked the galaxy with its victory had become the foundation for something far more important than military conquest. The galaxy had learned that the universe was vast enough for multiple approaches to civilization, technology, and social organization. The humans who had arrived with weapons that seemed primitive had taught them something more valuable than military tactics. They had shown that cooperation between equals was more powerful than the domination of the weak by the strong. As the Defiance continued its patrol through space that now belonged to free peoples rather than imperial subjects, Morrison reflected on how a single moment of refusing to surrender had changed the course of galactic history. The shot that had destroyed the Council flagship had indeed shocked the galaxy, but the greater shock had been discovering that there were alternatives to 3,000 years of unchallenged authority. The future belonged not to any single species or empire, but to the countless possibilities that emerged when different civilizations worked together as partners rather than masters and servants.